Hello everyone, today I'm going to be talking one last time, possibly, about the live-action Snow White film that came out about 4 months or 5 months or something, I don't know, ago. I did a, out of the theater sort of, well, wasn't exactly out of the theater, it was supposed to be another thing, but I did a reaction to it, my review of it, if you will, my thoughts on it, but this isn't going to be the last time I obviously talk about the OG Snow White film. I just want this remake shit to kind of be in the past now. But I was planning on sitting down at some point and talking and comparing the two versions of the Queen, since she is my favorite character, not only from that film, but just in general, my favorite film character of all time, and how the remake utterly fucked it up. So, don't worry, this is not going to get demonetized, because it doesn't get monetized anyway. I think the 2025 remake, live-action remake, fundamentally not only didn't understand the character, but almost worked to destroy anything that Walt Disney gave that character that would make her remotely interesting and psychologically complex and a villain that stands out among many other villains. Obviously, very important character, very influential character in film history. Lauded, obviously, is probably the most important animated film character of all time, to be truthfully honest with you. But that doesn't mean shit right now. We're talking about the two versions of the character. So, in the remake, they decide to give the Queen backstory. Now, the backstory that they give the Queen in the live-action remake is actually taken from the original film. What was cut, basically, in the original film, when the film was coming out as promotion for the film, the Walt Disney Company put out these, I guess they were magazine articles. I don't know what the hell they were. Barely any information on this. There's some old stills. But they put out some, prequel fucking, which you probably didn't even call it back then, but prequel material to get people excited to see the movie. Now, the live-action film takes the material from that prequel film, or prequel article, and then also injects the newer film with some deleted stuff that was not used in the original film, but was going to be used. Because the script of the original Snow White was being worked on and adjusted and changed almost up until the release of the film. I mean, they really were working close to the fucking chest with this, so it's interesting to me that they would, in the live-action film, take the regarded crap from the original and put that in. I don't know why they thought that the stuff that Walt Disney didn't think was good enough for his original film would then be good for a remake. I don't understand that. I don't get that, but the thing about the prequel stuff is that it sets up the fact that the Queen was a mysterious lady from another land. They don't mention this part in the remake. She sold her soul to a bunch of demons in order to gain knowledge on how to do black magic. So then she's kicked out of her kingdom because of that, probably from killing a bunch of people. Comes over to the new kingdom, marries Snow White's father, the king, and then kills him, and then takes over the power. Okay, fine. We don't need to know that shit for the original film. We don't have to know any of that stupid shit. Now, it's interesting in a sense, because I like, anything they want to tell me about the character from Walt, I'll accept from Walt Disney, but not important to the story. Important to the story is the events that are happening in the film at that time. So, don't need that shit. But it is interesting, because when I start rambling here about the character and what they fucked up, so I sound less like a crazy person, you should know maybe that background type of thing, because, I don't know, why the hell not? So the Queen from the beginning of the 1937 animated film is a bad apple, right? No pun intended, Jesus Christ, that was not supposed to be intentional, but yes, a very bad apple. Evil, right? Enjoys being evil, enjoys killing, enjoys... She's a fascist allegory, essentially, is what she is in the original animated film. She's a Hitler allegory. And Walt's moral stance was that basically this is a type of person that is basically a sadist and enjoys, the torturing and dismemberment and or dismembering, if that's even a word, of people. Fine. So we get that. We got that from the iconography or the images of the film. There's dead people everywhere. There's lobotomized skulls. She uses them in experiments. There was one wonderful scene that they didn't add to the film that they were thinking about doing, where she keeps humans shrunken in jars, and she plays with them like a cat, playing with a fucking mouse or whatever. That would have been a fucking great scene, but obviously incredibly narcissistic. So the Queen as a character is an interesting one, because she's obviously insecure, especially about the vanity sort of thing, the looks, the aging, that sort of thing. She values that, and anybody that opposes that, she just destroys. But that's the thing about her, is that she's not insecure in the sense of, oh, woe is me type of shit. For not 1 second does that original animated character ever think she's anything but the greatest thing in the fucking world. Anybody who opposes her is destroyed. Now, the thing about it, though, is that in the remake, they also do that, but they essentially turn the queen into a diva that constantly is checking herself out. Doesn't work. Because in the original animated film, in her queenly form, she's always got that pissed expression on, right? She's always enraged. Not enraged to the point where she's throwing shit, but pissed. Pissed off. She's not enjoying herself in this queen form as fully as she possibly could. Then in the live-action one, they do have her enjoying herself. She sings that ridiculous song. You know, she's strutting around like a diva. This then essentially makes the witch transformation pointless, but we're going to talk about that, because they don't understand that in their live-action film, so... But to have her, like, you know, checking herself out constantly, it's not the type... See, the problem with this is that the type of character and how it's presented as the Queen in the 37 film is a very Shakespearean Lady Macbeth, 1930s approach to this sort of thing. You know, she's very poised, she's very, like, mannered. To be honest with you, she's very much holding back a lot of things. Very impatient character. Because basically, the queen can only get joy when she is, you know, being a fucking psychopath. And, you know, cutting people up. Which is why we see the transformation has such an impact on her. But in her queen form, she is enraged, she is miserable, but she's not unhappy per se with herself. She still thinks she's the greatest thing in the world. And that's why when Snow White, of course, becomes the fairest in the land or whatever, it's immediately like, just kill the bitch. Kill her, cut her heart. You know, the prince comes a-knocking, the queen sees that, it's just done. She couldn't hide her behind these rags anymore. Now it's over. So she tries to show, I guess, some restraint, right, at first. Doesn't kill her right away, puts her in rags, tries to downplay her beauty. Of course, because she can't, she's an idiot, and can't see the fact that beauty isn't skin deep, so, you know, you can keep dressing Snow White up in rags and shit. It ain't gonna do anything. The queen is gonna be fucked regardless. But one more thing I want to mention about in the prequel material. It's not even prequel material. It was part of the script. The huntsman reacts the way he reacts to Snow White in the film because obviously Snow White's a good person, right? We know Snow White is good because, you know, animals are already attracted to her and she's beautiful and all this kind of shit inside and out. The huntsman, you know, oh, the little princess, I can't do it. In the other material, they were going to add more backstory, and it was going to be revealed that the queen has actually murdered every single other young woman prior to this and had the huntsman go out and do it. So basically, it's like a fucking drug addict almost. A woman will come of age, right? In this universe, when a woman becomes of age, she becomes pure of heart and stuff, and the queen just kills her and has the huntsman go out and kill her. But this one, of course, is an extra thing because it's the stepdaughter, it's a relation or something like that. So the queen maybe prolongs this one a little bit longer, waiting. And then, of course, you have the whole aspect of her wanting to possess Snow White's heart, put it in a box, keep it. We see that she keeps a lot of her fucking victims, you know, like hanging on the walls and all that shit. So, yeah, like it's strewn around or something. So that's that. She doesn't eat the heart or anything. She just wants to keep it in a box. Obviously, later on in the film, she wants to have Snow White buried under the ground, almost like preserving that fucking innocence, that life, but you can't get to it, that sort of thing. Instead of just flat out, you know, like chopping her head off or something. So there's a lot of things to think about. The queen needs to have herself put over everybody else. She needs to possess them. She needs to keep them as trophies and that sort of shit. So obviously very insecure and narcissistic at the same time. And that balancing act is not shown in the live-action film. She basically is just, again, strutting around like a cartoon fucking RuPaul Drag Race diva shit. There's no sense at all of any real, like, haughtiness or arrogance in that regard. It just comes across like a fucking little kid playing dress-up. Obviously, it's Gal Gadot, so she can't act for shit. But it comes across as a little kid. So the queen essentially has a moment in the original animated film, and that's the transformation sequence. That's what pushes the queen over into the only character that Walt Disney ever decided was too real to be in any more of his films. There never was another villain in a Walt Disney film that ever came even remotely close to the psychological aspects of the queen and Snow White. Nobody. There isn't a single one. Honestly, other than Frollo, later on. They did Hunchback. There isn't another fucking villain at all in the history of Disney, let alone Walt Disney, that have had any fucking psychological shit going on with them. So, but basically what I want to say about the Queen, what they don't understand as well about her character, is that the 1937 Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs film is an expressionist film. The plot of Snow White is essentially almost a clothesline to hang cinematic images on. But the actual point of the film is not even really... It tells the Snow White story fine, and it gets the moral fine without explaining it to the audience, of course, because you show, don't tell, and it was supposed to be made for grown-ups. I don't think moralizing would have been the best option. But the point of the story, the Snow White story itself, is that if you're a good person, you'll attract good people, and they will come help you. If you're a bad person, you'll die alone, and people will run from you and betray you. That's it. That's what the message is. Beauty isn't skin deep. The Queen doesn't understand that. She looks in the mirror, ironically, sees her reflection, can't see the feelings of other people, can't see the fact that Snow White is the fairies because she's a great person. Good, we got it. But that's not what's happening. The Snow White and Queen character in the Walt Disney film are predestined to their fates before the film even fucking starts. You know? They're doomed, right? Frame one. The Queen is set up on a fucking self-destruction quest. The thing about her, what makes her tragic, and I thought about this a lot, it's twofold. The audience is supposed to look at the Queen character and say, oh, look what she did to herself, right? Look how the way she lives her life, it makes her miserable. I see that in myself sometimes, where I can be narcissistic. I can fucking put superficial things ahead of me. And that is true. That is a part of the character, and that is a tragic thing. But you have to remember that in the animated film, the Queen essentially, as a character, isn't tragic because of that. She's tragic because she just couldn't fully be herself. She let that stuff, hold her back. Not that this stuff was a bad trait to her. She liked being a fucking narcissistic, goddamn fucking lunatic. But it was the vanity. It was the, I guess you could call it, sexist elements of the fucking story, where a woman is just hellbent on, this beauty thing being all she cares about, or she's willing to give up the thing she adores the most in order to get it back. But the real irony and the real tragedy is that she doesn't see that those superficial things were holding her back from being the true monster that she wants and enjoys being. Because that's what she is. She's still a monster. When she does her witch transformation, she doesn't become a good person because she doesn't have the insecurity anymore because she's an ugly shit. No, she finally is free and she can be looser now, and she doesn't have any inhibitions or whatever the fuck. Whatever. She's uninhibited. So she's bigger and louder and doesn't have to worry anymore about that stuff holding her back. She's not pissed anymore. She's not worried about competition with other people. She's free, and ultimately that's the way she's going to die, because the outside forces say, hey, listen, doesn't matter how happy you are yourself now, how much you read yourself, you're still a fucking evil piece of shit, and you're going to take out the good, which is Snow White. So Walt's essentially moralizing without ever actually saying it, which is kind of incredible, to be honest with you. The film is very much a moral lesson. It's a, you act like Snow White, you're rewarded. You act like the Queen, you die. And the Queen, of course, is an active character, unlike Snow White. It's a much more passive character, which is why probably the Queen also remains such a strong figure, such an influential figure, because over time, passive characters have been basically, put away. And even though Snow White's a great character, she's not a modern type of woman. But nonetheless, I think people need to understand that the Queen's character is tragic because she's always holding back. She's impatient. She's not happy. She's pissed. She's always in competition and thinking that she needs to wipe somebody else. And it is a bad way to live, obviously. All of it's a bad way to live. Being a fucking fascist dictator is a bad way to live. But the character itself is still evil. It's not the Jekyll and Hyde thing, even though she has the Jekyll and Hyde transformation. It's not a good person, and then, of course, releasing the inner monster and trying to get the good person back. It's not that. It's more like Jack Nicholson in The Shining, where you have a piece of shit, and then the ghost of the Shining hotel, they take that out of him and let him, explore that and, make him worse, quote unquote, but really just open up that sort of thing. And that's what the witch transformation does. The live action film doesn't understand any of that. Doesn't understand the point of the witch transformation, showing the rot and the Queen coming out. Doesn't understand the witch transformation as an excuse for the Queen then to free herself and to become more bombastic and happy with herself, because the Queen's already happy with herself in the Queen form. So if there's no miserableness in the other form, then what the fuck is the point of having a transformation? And it sure as hell doesn't understand the Queen's transformation being the ultimate sacrifice, which is what the animated film did. Of course, that is for her the ultimate sacrifice. That's the way she's going to take herself out. In the live-action film, she goes right back to being the queen. She does the transformation and then comes right back, and it means nothing. So it's threefold, basically, and the live-action just doesn't understand any of it. So I talked as fast as I could on that sort of thing. I don't really know much more to say on this. I didn't want this video to be fucking 45 minutes long. I didn't want to talk about this 45 minutes because I talked so long about the other the whole movie the last time. I find it fascinating, the Queen's character. I think there's a lot of contradictions there. I think that she's very much a character that I think really ultimately the point of this character more than anything was Walt Disney showing us just foolishness, showing us how a person can act a fool and end up destroying themselves. And there's a lot of irony. Obviously, the Queen, she makes the sleeping apple so that Snow White will be buried alive. Uses the dwarves, Snow White's quote-unquote friends, or the ones that are going to ultimately kill her. Like, she puts one step into it, and the dwarves will finish it. That doesn't happen. They don't bury her alive. So the Queen fails on that front. The Queen thinks that Snow White having friends is a weakness, right? She thinks that they're not going to help her, so that fucks up. The Queen goes to the cottage as the witch. Another verse or another point to the witch transformation, a perfect disguise, is because to the Queen, beauty is the most important thing, right? So she's going to turn herself so ugly, it's the ultimate fuck you to Snow White, because she can go there as fucking saint. She barely pantomimes a fucking good person to Snow White. She's taunting her. She's literally taunting her the whole time. The first time Snow White ever sees her in her witch form, she's fucking looking at her like a serial killer. So there is a sense of a toying with Snow White, seeing what she can get away with sort of thing, because Snow White will pity her because an ugly person, such a hideous ugly person couldn't be bad, right? Couldn't be bad, could be pitied, and Snow White will take her in, and that's of course what Snow White does. But ultimately the Queen underestimates the power of that goodness and that kindness, and of course the dwarfs come and knock it. But the fucking Queen can end up killing herself at the end of the animated film, which is also not what happens in this one. She strikes herself down with lightning. She has the lightning powers, and they come back to bite her in the ass, which is something that was also in that prequel shit from back in the 30s that Walt sent out, where they did say that the Queen basically did an oath where she knew that eventually she would be eaten by vultures and strike herself down, but she didn't give a shit. She just wanted those abilities. She wanted that quote-unquote power or whatever. So, yeah, none of that is in the live-action film. Nothing. There's no powerfulness. The Queen dies from the mirror. I don't know why they did that. I know, that's another thing, too, that one of the script versions of the animated film was supposed to have the mirror be the thing that transformed the Queen into the witch. She was supposed to shatter it after the heart box, had the pig in it, the heart of a pig, and the mirror then was supposed to turn her into a witch and start laughing at her and stuff, and that was silly. The mirror is the Queen's slave. I mean, obviously, ironically, she's a slave to it, but it's still her slave. They don't use the word slave in the remake, of course they don't. First word in a fucking Disney film ever was slave. They don't use that. And the mirror controls her, basically. She's tied to it in a way that originally was going to be in the animated film, and then they threw that out because Walt had said, no, she needs to be responsible for this transformation. The character doesn't work if she's not responsible for her own, essentially, demise. And, of course, her own, freedom, basically. I don't know, again, how intentional that was. That's what's in the film. I don't know. There's not a lot of reading on the original film about the Queen's character. All I know is that Walt said she was too realistic and that she would never do it again because it was just too much. And I can kind of see what he means by that now. And if you think about the character, you think about the actions, and also how Snow White is very much her story as much as it is Snow White's story, and that was never the case in any of the villains. But the transformation sequence, the Jekyll and Hyde-esque transformation, the Queen doing it to herself, freeing herself and ultimately destroying herself, is something that was not in the original fairy tale. And it adds that kind of psychological complexity to a character that on the surface is very one-dimensional. And I think that Walt Disney's was brilliant, and I think that the film is brilliant because it is a true expressionist film. It's all subtext. It's all subtext. So you're able to have a character that can be pure evil and enjoy being evil and, strut around and stuff, but also be tragic in not only a way for the audience to accept, of course, don't do this, vanity is bad, selfishness, it will destroy you, it will isolate you, but also to the character itself, where you just can't be happy with yourself because you let these superficial things get in your way. The animated Queen from the 37 film is obviously a very influential character. She's also a very adult character. in the way she's presented. There was a big thing about the Queen where they had to make sure this worked, because basically she was like that linchpin. If the villain of this film, which starts the film off, by the way, is the first animated character ever in American animated film to fucking speak or be seen on screen, but if she wasn't a plausible, realistic threat, the entirety of Snow White would fall apart, because then what's the point? You know, you have to get to an audience, especially an adult audience, that these fucking drawings want to murder each other. And it worked very well. And to have that character who influenced, the Wicked Witch of the West, Palpatine, the entire femme fatale, she's a proto femme fatale, her and Betty Davis were fucking total proto femme fatales. She influenced parts of Citizen Kane with her castle. She influenced Michael Powell with Boris Lermontov's character. She influenced a lot of people. You have so much of the Queen ripple through the history of cinema, and to see that reduced to whatever the flying fuck was in the live action film, I think it's disgusting. And I think that listen, if I don't know, I never heard anybody else really talk. I've seen some comments on videos about it, but I don't hear anybody talk about this shit. So I thought I would talk for 20 or so minutes about it. I love the character. I collect the character. One day I'll do a collection video and show you. It's only been 3 years of collecting, but I love her to death. I think she's a great lesson in just the human fucking side, the messy nature of humanity. And, I don't know, it's kind of cathartic a little bit, let your dark side out a little bit. But also, there's a lot of stuff of myself that I do, and I could see that in the Queen, and I think she's an interesting character. So, anyway, thanks for watching this, or listening to this. And yeah, I will talk about this film, in the future again at some point. I always do. And I will see you next time for another video. So, thanks for watching, and take care. Peace.